What's up, everyone? Jeremy Tyler here with Xceptional, and today I have Holistic Hilda or Hilda Labrada Gore here with me today, and she is the author of Podcasting Made Simple. I connected with her at the Point Retreats at a retreat here a few weeks ago, and we really hit it off. She has amazing things. I wanted to bring her on here today and let her introduce herself and tell us a little bit more about the podcast that she hosts, which is A Wise Traditions, how she got into that, and how podcasting can ultimately help you grow your brand and your business here in 2019. So Hilda, welcome.
Thanks, Jeremy. Oh my gosh, I'm so glad to be with you again. We had so much fun on the retreat. It was amazing. Yes. So as he said, I'm known as Holistic Hilda because I am a health coach and certified by the Institute of Integrative Nutrition. But I'm now a podcast coach, and it's the coolest thing because this platform is taking off. As you know, everybody and his brother and his dog wants to start a show, right? Yep. But I've learned so much. I've learned the ropes as I launched a show. Basically, a little bit of my background is that I was with the Weston Price Foundation as a member and later a chapter leader, this really cool nutrition group. And I thought, man, their stuff is so good. I just really want to get it out there. And I thought maybe I'd help them edit some of their brochures or just help because I'm a writer. And then I went to Kenya and I ended up interviewing this Maasai elder using my phone. And I thought, oh my gosh, the power of audio. Yeah. I have to see if I can get them going with a podcast. And so that's how my journey started. We launched the show in 2016, and now it's had over 1.7 million downloads. Wow. I've had a lot of success. And so what I want to do now is help people have that same success because it's a wonderful platform to get your message out, whatever your message is.
That's incredible. And you shared with me an analogy that struck me. Like, I've been beating this drum with our entire team here at Xceptional. It was an analogy using email. And could you share that with the audience here? Because I thought that was so tremendous.
Well, I think a lot of people don't know what to make of the podcasting thing. They're like, is it a fad or whatever? But every tech situation has early adopters, number one. So you've got the nerds, for example, with email, who were the first ones on it. And they're like, oh, this is a great way to communicate. And everybody else is scratching their head like, what are they talking about? And then you have the fact that it becomes widely embraced where everyone's like, oh yeah, email. What's your email? Do you have an email? But then it becomes expected where it's like, give me your email and I'll email you later. Like, it's just par for the course. So right now, podcasting is in between the early adopters and the embracers. So more and more people are embracing it, but there are still a lot of people who don't yet know about it. But eventually it's going to be at the place where it's expected. It's not, do you have a podcast? It's what's your podcast?
Wow. Yeah, that's amazing. And that hit me. And for us, podcasting has been an idea here at Xceptional for quite a while of starting a podcast. And very quickly we've started discovering, it takes a lot of time and there's a lot of resources that need to get invested in it. And if you really don't know what you're doing, you can really not have, I guess, the proper traction that you're looking for. So maybe take a little bit and just unpack that. I love that analogy so much. And it's really got me fired up here to push forward, not only for ourselves, but for our clients with podcasting. But how did you start, I guess, unpacking how you built the Wise Traditions podcast?
Well, the first thing is you need to have a message. You need to have something that you're passionate about if you want to start a show. If you're in it for the big bucks, it might take a little while to get there because I see podcasting as a great branch of a business, but it's not easy to monetize at first. But if you are a client of Jeremy's at Xceptional, or if you are a person who's just like, oh my gosh, I love dog shows, well, that's great. That might sound random, but there is an audience for that, Yeah. So go ahead and think about what you love because you're going to be spending some time at it. And sooner or later, this hobby might become a jobby down the line. But if it starts out as a hobby, you're going to need to invest some time, as Jeremy is saying. But I think make sure you know what you're about and then think about who you're talking to. I'll tell you a little story. So my holistic dentist wanted to start a show. And at first I was like, oh my gosh, like no one wants to hear a show about root canals or breathing or teeth that need extracting. I was like, this is crazy. But then I realized, oh my gosh, dentists do. Dentists want to hear about this stuff, or anybody
of course.
who's afraid of a root canal. So I was like, okay, this man has a niche, but he had to think about, who am I addressing? Because if he's talking to his peers in biological dentistry, then he'll have one way of presenting his information. If he's talking to the patient who's debating about a root canal, that's another message he needs to bring. So you need to think about what message you're going to bring and who you're talking to. We kind of call it your avatar listener, so that you can be on target. And then the third thing is you need to think about the method. And I think, Jeremy, this is the part that trips people up. They think, oh my gosh, I don't know tech. Like, it's just so complicated with the, compression and the equalization. And I've looked at boards and forget it. That's not for me. Well, I'm here to tell you, it is way easier than you think. I wasn't a person that was super tech savvy. I knew a little bit about a board because I'm a musician and stuff. But what you really need to do is figure out how to record. So if you can push record on your cellular device, on your voice memo app, then you can record a podcast. Don't let yourself get tripped up by the tech, because even if you can't do all the bits and pieces, you can find companies like yours and others that will take you by the hand and walk you through it. So what I did, like I said, I literally was interviewing the Maasai tribesmen with my voice memo app. And then I could later use that sound, that audio, because it wasn't that bad. And so you do need a way to record. You can use a phone. You can use some little devices that you can buy on Amazon. One of my favorites, if I'm going to get specific here, is a Zoom H1N. It's just like this little baby microphone. I actually have one. I can grab it in a second if you want the visual. But it is super portable, and the audio quality is really decent. And I've taken it into a Panera, interviewed people in there, and you have the slight ambient background noise, which adds a little interest to the interview, but it doesn't dominate. You really hear the people's voices loud and clear. So that's one of my favorites to recommend to starting podcasters, because it's super simple to use and it makes you look super professional. I'm going to grab it real quick.
Yeah, please do. That's awesome.
Yeah. So as you can tell, I get a little bit hyped about it, but
I know your energy is viral. I love it.
Here it is. This is a Zoom H1N, you guys.
And how much does one of those cost?
Yeah, it's like $100, and you literally just push that little red button to start and stop. I'm like, could it be simpler? No. And then it has this little like handle you can put on it, so it just looks more legit when you pass it back and forth or whatever you're going to do. But so you definitely need to record, and then of course you need to edit, right? So like I said, you can do it yourself or hire someone. I use Audacity. It's a very simple free software, and it's super intuitive, like cut and paste. Just like in a Word document, is cut and paste. Cut out the part where somebody was saying, or cut out a word. And if you want it somewhere else, paste it elsewhere. It's so easy. And I think I break down a little bit of that in the book, but even if not, there's so many YouTube videos and stuff you guys can find. But I will just say this. You could be an excellent runner. You might have like the natural talent to have a show. Your friends might say, oh my gosh, you're such a good talker. I love talking to you. You draw people out. You should have a show. Awesome. Do it. But it really helps to have a coach, because the best athletes have coaches that help them get to where they need to be, or somebody to really walk you with it. Because you can watch YouTube videos, but you still might be left with a lot of questions. So I do have a coaching business. I know Xceptional is working on some stuff. So find somebody that can walk you through it, because it really helps to be able to say, well, what about this? What about that? And then get your questions answered and move on. But once you get going, you're going to garner steam. People are going to love your show, and it's going to be amazing.
How long did it take for you guys to start gaining traction? Like, how many podcasts did you record? How many years? Like, what was the timeline for that? And maybe what was was there a certain podcast that really helped it take off? Like, what were all the pieces that made that come together?
That's a great question. I think we wanted to hit the ground running. We wanted to start with a bang. You don't want to have an opening of your little boutique store on Connecticut Avenue with just 2 balloons and, you're not going to get a lot of foot traffic.
No.
So, you need to advertise, you need to get the word out, you need to build pre-buzz. So that's another reason why people might want to coach or talk to somebody, because there's a little bit more to it than you may think. But be that as it may, what helped me was I tried to start with some heavy hitting guests from the top, which you might think, oh my gosh, I don't know anybody in this field of the dog show. You would be surprised how quick people are to say yes when you offer to interview them. It kind of makes them
Yeah.
feel good. They know it's a platform, and that's the secret. So suddenly I'm interviewing Dr. Tom Cowan, who's a well-known holistic doctor in California. And he's going to tell his audience about the show. So I had him, Dr. Natasha Campbell McBride. She's the author of The GAPS Diet. And I think Sally Fallon Morell, the head of the foundation. So these names might not mean much to some people, but in the health and wellness circles, especially ancestral health circles, these names mean a lot. So we tried to start with the heavy hitters. And I would recommend for people, even if you have a solo show, like it's just you on the mic talking about your favorite things, which is totally legit. It's totally legit.
Yeah.
I would make sure to record 3 to 5 episodes before you launch so you can pick your best ones and then release them at once. You want to release, you can have a schedule of once a week, but when you start with a bunch so people don't think you're a fly-by-night operation that might be here today but not there next week. So, and that kind of leads me into my 3 favorite tips for people. Do you mind if I give them?
Yes, please do. I would love that. Are they in the book? I have to ask that. Are they in the book?
I don't know. Oops, I better go back and look.
But perfect. Yes, please do. I'm interested. Yeah.
Okay. Well, these 3 tips, I will be honest, I learned them from John Lee Dumas. And he's like one of the grandfathers of podcasting, which is funny because he's like 40 maybe. But what I mean by that is he's been around a long time, and he started before podcasting got big. And he was the one that figured out, oh my gosh, if I interview big name guests and I interview one a day, so he has this crazy pace of putting out 1 episode a day, then that's going to exponentially grow my audience. And he was right about that. But he said there are 3 things you need, and I embrace these, and I think it led to the success of the show. One is content is king. And you will hear this over and over again from podcasters who are in the know. Like, even if your audio quality is bad, or just now, like I stumbled with what I was saying, people might be like, oh, I don't think they're going to want to hear that. If your content is good, they will stick around. They will really stick around. So I think my first few episodes sounded like I was in a bathroom like this. It wasn't good. It wasn't good. But because the content was amazing. I mean, Dr. Natasha Campbell McBride talking about gut healing, Tom Cowan talking about the deep reasons why people get sick. Like, this grabbed people's attention.
Yeah. So
content needs to be first and foremost the main thing. Don't put out an episode where you're like starting off by saying, oh, I don't really know what I'm going to talk about today. Click, I wouldn't listen to that. You need to think ahead and make sure it's the best you have to offer. So content is number 1. The second thing is consistency. So since we launched our show in 2016, we haven't missed a week. So what does that mean? It means our listeners can count on something coming out. Do they listen every week? Well, maybe they pass some by if they're like, that's not my subject. Okay, that's fine. But they know we're going to be there. And some of them actually really look forward to Monday mornings now because our episode is there. So whatever you decide to do, be consistent. And here's another secret for brand new podcasters. It's you can do seasons. So if you're like, oh my gosh, I can't do this week in, week out. I'm a teacher. I want to have vacations. Fine. Do a season, like a Netflix series or something. Do 10 episodes, take a break, then come back with your next season. It's fine. It'll keep interest going. But when you're saying you're going to be there, you need to be there. And then the third thing is promotion. Just really, you can make an amazing cake, but if nobody knows you're selling it at the bakery, no one's going to buy it. So you need to get the word out, and don't feel like you're hyping yourself up. You have to remember you're bringing something to your audience, and that's why you're involved in all this. It's not, the message is the most important thing. It's not you necessarily. Because some people feel a little sheepish, like, oh no, I don't like to be in the limelight. It's not you, it's your message, So for you guys, it's branding, it's creativity, it's helping people with these excellent ways to grow their business, and for me, it's health stuff and podcasting. So get the word out there, get on those social media platforms, do what you can, but definitely spread the word because you've got something good to offer.
Wow, that's huge. And it's kind of the chicken before the egg type scenario where it's like, okay, well, as you get bigger audience, you're able to get bigger influencers. So it's interesting because there's this kind of like, which one comes first? And in your opinion, do you feel like getting it out there and getting the audience and then bringing in the bigger influencers, do you feel like that's a good strategy, or which way would you see that working better?
Yeah, very good question. It never hurts to ask. So don't fear rejection is the first thing I would say. Knock on every door. Sally Fallon Morell, the head of the foundation, always surprises me by the people she says yes to be on their shows. But, again, she knows it's one more vehicle to get her message out. So don't be afraid to ask. Although I have to admit, I've been knocking on Gary Taub's door for a while. He's the one that wrote The Case Against Sugar. No answer, but I'm not giving up. So go ahead and ask for the heavy hitters, but keep your head down and just do what you do. Put out those episodes. And also remember that it's about community. So even if you just have 50 people who love dog shows, and they're joining your little doggy tribe or whatever you want to call it, doggy park, and so that's okay because they're going to start to tell people and doors will open. This is the coolest thing, Jeremy, that's kind of blown me away. Like, because I'm a podcaster, I have been able to get press passes for health conferences and meet people that I never would have had any time or connection with, but suddenly you've got that by your name and doors will open. I just hung out with Joel Salatin, which maybe if people don't know any of the names I've said so far, they might know him. He's the farmer who was highlighted in Michael Pollan's The Omnivore's Dilemma, an amazing farmer at the forefront of the regenerative agriculture and, grouping and stuff and movement. So anyway, so here I was just hanging out with Joel. I interviewed him for the podcast. I interviewed him for my upcoming YouTube channel. And it was just like so much fun. And so you keep your head down, you do your work, you put out the best you can, and you'll get those heavy hitters. But more importantly, you'll get your message out and you will grow your tribe.
Wow. Yeah, that's awesome. And for people who, like myself, who are looking to become better hosts, what are the tips and advice that you can give to them on being a good host and what makes you a good host? And if you're not good at the start, what can you plug into to help make you better?
Oh, I have a bunch of tips competing in my mind. I'm trying to think which one to start with. I guess I would say this first and foremost. The role of the host is to make the guest shine. So don't overly insert yourself. I mean, I have a tendency to do that actually, because I'll be like, oh, I know what you're talking about when you're mentioning alpha lipoic acid, blah, blah, blah. It's like, okay, it's okay to say that, but I should not take over. I need to ask another question to lift up the guest. That's who your audience is tuning into. If you have an interview style show, if you have a solo show, then let yourself shine. That's fine. But if you are the host, lift up that guest. That's one. The other is, don't feel like you have to, if you're nervous and you stumble a lot or you're not sure what questions to ask, feel free to write some questions down ahead of time. Yep. I used to just fly by the seat of my pants. I like to talk, obviously, and I love to interact. But now I'll put a little bit of questions down on paper, send them to my guest ahead of time because it makes them feel comfortable and it makes me feel comfortable because I'm like, okay, we have a starting point. We don't have to stick to those. We're not wed to them, but it helps. And if you listen to John Lee Dumas's Entrepreneur on Fire, the last time I listened, it's been a little while.
That's a good one. I love that one. Yeah.
It's great. And he asks the same questions every time. And you might think, well, how does that work? Well, again, he's letting the guest shine, right? Yeah. So don't be afraid to even have a similar arc. I wouldn't actually ask the same questions every time, but I wouldn't worry about it too much. And the third secret I wanted to share is listen. And that is a little bit harder than you think because sometimes you might be thinking, oh, what's my next question? But they might be saying something powerful. I'll never forget actually on a recent episode, this man was like saying something really important. He's like, well, that's a truth bomb. And I was like, tell me more about your wife or something. I totally changed the subject. And he had given this wonderful truth bomb. So you need to stay focused and listening. And that's one of the secrets of being a good host as well.
Got it. Being present and actually listening to the conversation and because, and for me, I don't like coming into this discussion. I didn't prepare too much. I literally prepared on the car ride to the office here this morning. I was like, going to go through this. Right. And for me, I love to come in and just have a conversation and let it unfold. Cause when you are, in my mind, like when you're talking with someone like yourself, who's an expert in this space, the conversation is just going to go. And it's going to go in an amazing way. And from an over preparation standpoint, I could see where people would almost be like, oh, but then there's this next question. And then there's this next question. And that question's over. And now we got to go, so it's, I could definitely see where that could definitely start to make a good conversation, that candor just fall apart.
Yeah, I lean your way totally because remember on the retreat when you and Heidi were sitting in the chair and I was sitting next to you and we started talking about mind-blowing cosmic things,
Yes.
about
Yeah.
being present and, health and wellness. And it was just wonderful. Why? Because we were relaxed, we were comfortable, we were just going back and forth. And I think the best podcasts are like a conversation that everyone else is just overhearing. It's like you're in a coffee shop and it's between two friends. So yeah,
Yeah.
I would lean toward the simple back and forth that a natural conversation would bring.
Absolutely. And I remember us afterwards, we're like, wow, we should have recorded that. It was like, that was really good because it is really interesting how when you are just truly engaged and I think interested in people, not only their backgrounds, but what they're doing and where they're going, it's just like those golden nuggets just come out just very organically. And that's what we were experiencing in that conversation. It was just like, everything was just like, wow.
Yeah. It
Cool.
was. We were high on life, I think, too, just from being out
We
there.
were, yeah. The Point Retreats. Shout out to Krista Rimal, Primal Hacker, Thaddeus Owen. Absolute amazing time over at the Point Retreats. And maybe we just take a moment on that. What was your experience at the Point Retreats? What was your favorite part?
Wow. Well, I think it was a little bit about what you and I were talking about that evening. It was about unplugging. Even if we're health coaches or in that space, like we just get on this treadmill of life and we don't take a time to be. And, I'm as guilty as the next person of just trying to check things off the to-do list. I just love to check things off, but I don't know. I just think we need more of that. So I really loved unplugging. I loved being in the cold and kind of startling my body. I loved seeing what my body could do. I had been prepping for months, cold adapting. So when they were like, jump in the lake, I'm like, okay, I'm ready. And I was, and it was just so fun. And people look at you and they look at the pictures and think, oh, you must be crazy. And it's like, oh no, it's the opposite. I'm really living. So I just thought it was phenomenal. And actually, I'm glad you're mentioning this because I hope to take the video that we filmed of the podcast panel that we did with Thaddeus and Heidi and some others and put that on my YouTube channel when it launches in a couple months here. So, because it was phenomenal, but nothing beats going there. So definitely go, you guys, next year.
Yes, I look forward to it. Fire and Ice #2, we will be there.
Yeah.
And with your YouTube channel, maybe some of the people watching isn't a podcast enough? Like, and YouTube, like where does YouTube tie into this podcasting and value adding framework?
That's a great question. Well, this is the thing your audience might not know. So I make this podcast, the Wise Traditions podcast, for the Weston A. Price Foundation. So all of the content is theirs, which is fantastic. Like I'm glad to be working with them. We're collaborating. It's fantastic. But I thought two things. One is I want to make some of my own content that's mine to do with whatever I like. And two, I want the visual component. So that's the piece that we don't have with the foundation. So I want to do, I'm still going to be working with them, but I want to keep lifting up ancestral health practices, but with the visual. So that's why I'm launching the YouTube channel. Now, some people do visual podcasts, which is really cool, but I think, well, I'm of two minds on that. Like I can see the benefit of it because people love YouTube and so they might just get on. But I also feel like people are on the go so much that audio is easier and it's also easier to record that way. So your guest doesn't have to worry like, how do I look? How's the lighting? And it's a little more complicated. So if I were just starting out, I wouldn't worry about YouTube. I would start with podcasting. It's a great place to begin. And I will also say this right now. Don't be afraid that it's saturated, you guys. Some people think, oh no, there's too many people out in the field. There is room for you because no one else has your voice. So you're going to bring something special to the conversation. What if, not Joel Salatin, but let's say Jesse Strait or some other farmer was like, well, I guess I can't get into this space because Joel's got it all tied up. No, he has one farm and one voice.
Yeah.
And he's amazing. Yes, granted. Or what if someone said, I'm not going to do a health program because, Ben Greenfield is just, blowing it up. So I'm not going to do it. No, Ben has his voice. As a matter of fact, his show goes super deep into some of the science. That's not the way the Wise Tradition ones go because I like to reach for the furthest person out. So we have different slants, different approaches, and different audiences probably. So don't feel like it's too saturated. I feel like the time is now. We're still on that between, like I said, the early adopter and the embracing phase. So there's room for you.
Awesome. And for people getting into the space right now, and just looking and thinking to come into the space, like what would be the number one thing that you would say to them right now?
Oh gosh, just thinking about it and just looking at it. Well, I'd say get my book.
Yeah.
But I really think.
And where can they get it really quick?
A little plug.
We'll do a little plug here. Yeah.
I feel so silly. I really didn't mean to say that, but it's not as hard as you think, you guys. It really isn't as hard as you think. That's why I called it Podcasting Made Simple. I have gone into studios where they're like, oh, we have to work on the EQ. And they're like mentioning all these things that I had no idea about. And I got really nervous. And that's actually why I co-authored that book with someone who I thought, well, he knows the tech better than I do. But then as I went along, I realized he doesn't know that much more than me, but he does, it's in there, it's fine. But I just mean, don't let something stop you. If your inner voice is telling you, do it, you can do it. The other thing I would say is backward plan a little bit. So set a date, let's say like June 2019, June 15, 2019, and then backward plan a little bit and think, okay, what do I need to do between now and then to get this show done? Because otherwise it's just going to always stay a dream. And I don't know about you, but I'm not a person that just wants to dream about things. I want to see them come to fruition. Because if you X yourself out before the race even begins, you did lose. But if you at least give it a try, like I said, my first few episodes probably weren't amazing. Doesn't matter. They're out there and it's gotten better as I've gone along. And some people still go back and listen. They binge listen and start with episode 1. And it's like, okay, it's still out there. There's still some good stuff in there. So don't X yourself out, plan ahead, and know that there's room for you.
Awesome. I absolutely love that. And when people are taking action on this, the next really big question that I have personally is, how do you get this to all the platforms? There's Google Play Music, there's Apple, there's the iTunes store. There's literally, I can name probably about 10 different platforms that you can actually download and listen to podcasts on. So how do you get your podcast onto those platforms?
Well, I wish I said it was like, I could say it's super complicated and you need experts. It is so easy, Jeremy.
Really?
Actually. Yes.
Wow. Because this is like the biggest question mark in my mind. And it's one of the main reasons why I haven't started the podcast at this point is I'm like, I don't have time to like figure all that out.
Yeah. It seems complicated. It's not. This is all you do. You have your media host platform, something like Libsyn or Spreaker or Blueberry. In other words, you have to have somebody put your show out there. So it's kind of like, I've got my toy, I need a manufacturer. So Libsyn, Spreaker, Blueberry, those companies and others put your toy out there and they put it in all the different stores for you. So Libsyn, like once I gave them and I set up with them, and again, this isn't hard either, but you go to Libsyn, you say, okay, I want to start a show. Once you give them your episodes, you can set destinations like Apple Podcasts, Google Play, iHeartRadio. I mean, like I literally can just set it up through there. Then once you're garnering some steam, some podcast aggregators like Stitcher or Overcast, like just regular apps that want you to be a part of their offerings, will just grab you. And that's fine because they're not grabbing you and not saying that it came from you. They're grabbing you and saying, this is the Wise Traditions podcast from the Weston Price Foundation. So the destinations will often be set up, to answer the question more succinctly, they'll often be set up through your media host. And if not, sometimes you'll just get grabbed, but it's not hard. And you can easily just start with Apple Podcasts. If you're like, oh, I don't have time for all that, start with Apple Podcasts and the rest will kind of fall into place, I think.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for that. That gives me a starting point now to start researching that and plug into it. It sounds like it's way easier than I thought it was going to be. So that's cool. That is my golden nugget here for today. So closing this out here, is there anything else that you'd like to add or share with the viewers that are listening to this?
I'm trying to think.
Putting you on the spot here.
Well, I have, as you can see, I have so many thoughts and I get so excited about podcasting because I feel like it's really like kind of the democratization of communication. So in other words, it used to be that the information was in the hands of certain people, like only the people producing print or the people with a pulpit, literally, but now it's like anybody can have a show. And what got me started was I'm in this band, right? And my 15-year-old violinist was like, I'm going to start a podcast, Hilda. And I was like, oh my gosh, he's starting a podcast. If he can start one, I can start one. So it was a little competition thing going there. But it really is a beautiful thing because why shouldn't he have a show? He was actually a musical genius. And he actually never even started his show, unfortunately. But I just want to say, like there is room for you and your voice needs to be heard. And if you have something, don't let anything hold you back.
Awesome. Well, Hilda, Thank you so much for joining me on this, first episode of our digital video podcast. I'd love to make an audio version and have this be our actual first podcast. We look forward to creating podcasts and partnering with you to not only get that off the ground, but also help others add value and get their podcast started. Hilda, if people want to connect with you, how do they find you?
The easiest way is on Instagram, because I'm all over that, at Holistic Hilda. And they can also go to my website, holistichilda.com, where they'll find blogs related to health. And I do offer free 15-minute consults to help people get going on podcasting. One of my favorite things, Jeremy, is really just to bounce ideas around with people and encourage them. So just, hit me up, write me, we'll set something up and we'll do 15 minutes and I'll just help you know if your idea is any good, but it probably is. If you've got one, there's an audience for you, I'm sure. So yeah, hit me up at holistichilda.com or at Holistic Hilda on Instagram.
Wonderful. Well, thank you all so much for watching, and we'll see you guys in the next one. Peace.
Thanks, Jeremy.
See you, Hilda.